I've noticed so many people having gone online. They haven't only gone online, they've gone international. And I think it's wonderful because the world is now your oyster. And people are really tapping into that and finding different ways to truly connect online.
Welcome to the Brand Stars podcast. If you're a visionary woman with a message to share, and you're already the face of your brand, but would love to become the star of your brand, then you're in the right place. I'm Naomi Espint, longtime personal branding photographer, videographer, trainer, and creator of the online Brand Stars Academy. I host inspiring guests on this podcast, each an expert in their own field. And we all share a passion for helping our fellow women to shine our light and share our brilliance in the world even more brightly. So that's the golden thread goal of each episode. Let's dive in. Enjoy. Very special welcome to my amazing guest, Colleen Leclerc. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, Naomi. Hi, everyone.
It is wonderful to have you with us. And to give you a little intro about this amazing lady who we have with us, Colleen is a culture and change consultant and also a relationship systems and leadership coach who works with groups and teams and individuals globally online. And you would have seen our topic today is online facilitation and leadership. And this is such a hot topic at the moment for pretty much all of us, I reckon. So lean in and listen closely, everybody. There's a lot to learn here. Colleen has been a virtual worker for over 15 years, and she is passionate about helping people and organizations to work together effectively, especially in a digital, ever-changing, and increasingly complex world. And her main area of focus is on enabling healthy relationships with self, with others, and also with work, and especially to help people to alleviate stresses and strains related to change and also work-life integration. Is that ringing any bells, everybody? I think that's something else that affects all of us. And Colleen actually beautifully exemplifies this in her own life. She is a married mom of a gorgeous little 6-year-old boy and also 2 stepsons who are 24 and 16. And at the same time, she is furthering her studies in psychology, and she is running her successful and very well-established coaching business, which is called Connect EQ. So it's really a privilege and a pleasure to have you with us, Colleen. And I know your busy schedule is much busier actually than most people I know, and has been ever since the beginning of lockdown, because you are so engaged in helping people do their work in the online space. So I'm extra grateful to you, love your work, and you as a human being. And can I ask you to kick off with just giving us a little insight into your journey and what has led you to do the amazing things that you do today?
Oh, thank you, Naomi, and thank you so much for this opportunity to have this conversation with you and all your listeners out there. So just a little bit about my journey. I think it's because from a very young age, I grew up in an environment that was loving yet quite filled with conflicts. And so from a very young age, I was exposed to how people interact, behaviors, and how they treat each other. And I was very aware of my inner world. I always noticed my inner world, and I noticed people around me, and I became fascinated by relationships, interpersonal relationships at a very young age as a result. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. And so that was the beginning of my path and my journey that I moved away from. In fact, I got quite involved in the tech space at a young age. I think I was about 8 when I was doing video recording, technology configurations, and I was like the techie of the house from a very young age. And so I also developed quite a strong relationship with technology from a young age. And so my path went on the technology route, but I was always drawn to people and to relationships and to behavior. And quite honestly, I find people a lot more interesting. I love what technology can do, but I find people a lot more interesting. And so that's what got me focused on the path that I chose to leave corporate. I think it's about 4 years ago now, to really focus on Connect EQ and cultivating healthier relationships with self and other. So if you know, in a sense, I've been informally studying people, behavior, relationships, literally my whole life, and more recently, formally studying emotional intelligence and interpersonal dynamics and behavior. And so it's a passion, it's a love, and I really think that we're always in relationship, whether it's with other people, most definitely with ourselves. That really sets the tone for any relationship. And other being people, technology, work, change, you name it. If we can be in relationship, it has an impact on ourselves as humans and on each other.
Hugely so. Yes, Colleen, thank you. Thank you. Before I continue, I just want to say hello to Anne Merritt and also to Lynn McMaster. Hi, ladies. Lovely to have you with us. Please feel free to hop in and comment and ask questions if you have them. Colleen, really, I'm so fascinated by your work and the whole way that you go about doing what you do. And even more now that you've mentioned that you were already getting involved in video at like 8 years old, which is so ahead of the curve. And this is how I know you, being ahead of the curve. And what I mentioned a little earlier with regard to, we'll definitely get into the EQ and relationships shortly, but just firstly, you know, where we're at with the whole COVID scenario is that so many people have had the need and sometimes the inspiration, and both, to take their businesses online, who perhaps haven't had before. And you've been working like this for so many years. So I'm going to ask you, Colleen, if you can give our viewers any advice and insight and guidance if they are in that process of taking their business online or thinking about it, really to do that in the most effective way, because now's the time. Am I right?
Absolutely, Naomi. And I've had a preference for virtual work for more than 2 decades. That's not to say that I haven't worked in a physical space. I've spent many years in corporate and global corporate, so I did share office spaces with people. But this preference I've had for 2 decades, if not more. And so this is ultimately what it comes down to. I mean, the world went distributed literally overnight. And I think it threw so many people, and everyone was forced to pivot and move online. And to find the most effective way is important. I mean, what is effectiveness? It's relative. It's what you find. It's the same as success. Success is relative. And so I would say it's got to be a careful approach, a deliberate approach. You'll often hear me talk about being conscious and intentional and deliberate about what it is, but it has to start with self. So I acknowledge the fact that not everything is possible online, and it is very different. And so it comes down to preferences, it comes down to needs, and not only of yourself, but of your family systems and your work systems, and to really, really tap into what that means, and to look at your relationship, not only with yourself and each other, but your relationship with technology itself. To work in the online space really, it takes knowing yourself, and it takes creativity, curiosity, adaptability. I mean, when I discovered this preference, as I said, like 20 years ago, people were often very curious. Like, how did you work remotely before video technology was available? And I did this via the telephone, via a cell phone. So I was doing asynchronous work before I even knew what asynchronous was, and that's coming up now. And it really means getting stuff done in between meetings and away from other people. And it's just how I made the most use of my time. I mean, I spent about 5 years in London, and I was running global infrastructure projects at that time, not even software projects. So they were actual physical installs where I had to get onto calls, different time zones, build rapport with people that I actually didn't know what they looked like all over the world. It was so interesting to think back that the only time I actually got to see what some of my colleagues looked like was when LinkedIn was born. And I looked them up and I was like, oh, that's what you look like. So we literally built rapport using the good old landline and got into relationship and built agreements and built trust, all using telephones. And so that's when I thought, wow, you know, this is the way to work. And I've got lessons myself through the World Going Distributed. I mean, I tried to sell the benefits of this way of working a decade before the World Went Distributed, and people were like, oh, you know, why, if we do it anyway, you know, why would we need your help or anything like that? And I thought to myself, you know, there's got to be something that I'm missing. And what's interesting is not everyone is the same. You know, everyone's got differences, and I've learned a hard lesson over the last 6 months, and that's, you know, meet people where they're at.
Yes.
It was quite a lesson to learn. You know, I've had these heated debates with people, and I think what I'm seeing happening is people are seeing some of the benefits. I think there's still a way to go in terms of experimentation and trying new things, but I have failed to let people know that I don't believe you can only work online. We are human social beings, and we need to be together. And so what I'm finding people are doing is finding their own feet, finding their own preferences, and now they're needing to have those courageous conversations with themselves and each other around how to make it work, whether it's going into an office space 2 to 3 times a week and setting up their schedules or the rhythm of their meetings around when they're not in the office. I think people are really starting to see the benefit of this way of working, and also start looking into asking the deeper questions, like, you know, what is it that I want, and what do I need, and what is my preference, and what are other people's preferences, and how can we start co-creating and collaborating together around what works for us.
Yeah, brilliant. Colleen, wise words. And I just want to share this comment in case you didn't see it, from Anne Merritt. She says, oh my gosh, I remember those days. Back in the day, the good old telephones, hey, and cell phones, and Dave had a car phone when I met him 28 years ago. He was like such a yuppie. It was like, yay. But such a different world, as you say. And also, I just want to pick up on what you're speaking about here with regard to our approach. And, you know, many of us of our older generation, let's call it, we've got someone else here, let's see. I've only been working online for the last 6 years. That's Anne. Oh, okay, Anne. Yeah, and Anne's been doing a lot of work online, so she will also have some things I'm sure she could drop in here. And then we also have Di Thompson. Yes, I resonate with that. Meet people where they're at. Thank you, Di. Yes, brilliantly said, Colleen. And thank you for picking up on that, Di. And that's exactly what I was going to ask you about, Cole, because so quite a few people, especially, like I say, in our older generation, not so much the youngsters who've grown up on phones, but there's quite a lot of resistance, as you've mentioned, to working online and to technology specifically. So do you have a way of sort of laying a foundation to work with people to help them, you know, get through that aspect of it, the kind of mindset side for themselves and within organizations? Because I know you've worked with some big groups of people, as far as I understand it, and also with facilitation online. Can you speak a little bit to that, to helping people get used to it?
So that's such an interesting question, Naomi, because there are different schools of thought around mindset versus behavior. So some people say get your mindset right, and then you will be able to do things differently. And I've got a yes and approach to that. I go, do the thing, do what you need to do, and then your mindset will follow. It's like if you're thinking about going to the gym or getting on a treadmill, it doesn't work for me. I just think about it and it just won't happen. But if I just do it, I think, oh, this is good and I need to keep at it. Then you start getting into the practice. So it's quite an interesting thing around mindset versus behavior. But saying that, it doesn't mean I don't feel fearful or whatever the feelings that come up for people when it comes to using technology in general and different pieces of technology. I feel the fear too, and I still feel it, even though I'm curious and I want to explore and I want to experiment, and I get it wrong as well, and that's okay. But I mean, that is how we learn. So I mean, we can talk about experimenting, we can talk about what we want to do, but until you do it, it's not going to happen. And so the key is to find those people that you can play with.
Yes.
And get into a room. And I mean, this is the first time I think I'm on this platform, no?
Yay!
So
what an honor for me. Brilliant.
And always looking to try new things. So it's really about adopting that curiosity and experimenting and giving yourself permission to fail.
Yes.
What is failure?
Yes.
It's not, it's relative. Just like I said, success is relative. Just try it out and do what you need to do and learn from it. That's all I can say about that.
Brilliant. I love how you said that, Colleen, and I agree with you 100%. And that's exactly what I say about being on camera as well. For photos and video in particular, let yourself be open to making mistakes. It's the pathway to having fun and being yourself, which is the most important thing. And I think as a worldwide sort of culture, we're getting a little bit more used to that, to being able to, have a live session like this and not have to be perfect, because we know we all are human. None of us can get away from that. And so, yeah, to embrace it. Like your playground, Di. Wonderful. Thank you, Di. I love it too. I find StreamYard quite a lovely playground. And Colleen, so talking about tech, so StreamYard is the platform that we're using now to stream this live. And there's a couple of things about it that I really enjoy. And Colleen, I've seen you doing, I mentioned just now, facilitating but big groups. I think anything up to even 100 people you've done, am I right? And in sessions online where you, let's say on Zoom, and I'm not like the techie, but where you have breakout rooms, and then you actually even have them engaging with certain aspects of software so they can post their ideas together and gather them in certain places. So I just wanted to ask you if you can sort of give a little bit of insight for our viewers, just to open their minds about how we can use technology specifically for interacting with each other in a more integrated way than just talking, like we're talking now. Because for many of us, we might not have any idea of what's possible there. Can I ask you to touch on that?
Thank you, Naomi. I love that question. I'm actually quite a techie geek. I'm a tool geek. I love new tools. And I've obviously Zoom took off when COVID hit. I've actually hosted groups larger than 100, and Zoom would need you to, it requires a special license for that. So Zoom is just one of the many video technologies available. I actually found myself getting quite curious about the word Zoom fatigue, and that's just because the whole world went onto Zoom, or a lot of people in the world, I won't say the whole world, many people started using Zoom. That virtual fatigue is a real thing. The science comes out of a NASA study. And before we get into the tools, one of the technical pieces and why it's so important is virtual fatigue is a real thing. And in my facilitation, I plan and design for 5-minute breaks for people to give their eyes a break, their brain a break, to actually get up and walk around. I find it fascinating as humans that we have to remind ourselves to, and I'm pausing and slowing down here, pause, slow down, take deep breaths, take breaks, stand up, walk around. I mean, it's become so important to, even if you have to set yourself a reminder to do it, to get back into the habit of being human and being healthy around it. So I had to share that before I go into the technical side. I do use Zoom a lot. I have facilitated on Microsoft Teams and on Google Meet. I'm just trying to think of all the different now. I'm really pleased that Microsoft Teams development release, they are going to be enabling breakout room functionality, but there are hacks around that. There's also Cisco WebEx. There are hacks around that to get people to break out into smaller groups, and I think it's so important, and especially at the beginning of a meeting, to get people into smaller groups so that they can truly connect with each other and then come back into the bigger plenary, however that's how, it doesn't matter how big that plenary is. If you get people into smaller groups, you can build that intimacy and connection so that they can feel safe enough to engage with people in the larger group as well. And so that's just some of the video technology. There are many collaboration tools out there. There's Jamboard, there's Miro, Mural. All of these are just so intuitive and so wonderful to use, and so they just so many. So I mean, to go and pick one of these, it wouldn't, I would say go ahead, play with them, get acquainted, pick one or two that are your favorites, get really good at that if you want to, and then start experimenting with others. I know Mentimeter is also a nice interactive tool, but that's not the only one. There are just so many. But I hope I've given the audience a few things to go out there and try and play with. It's just really such fun to do.
I love that you called it fun, Cole, and I love that you started off by talking about the human side and giving ourselves breaks. I must say, I experienced this Zoom fatigue big time through the sort of early stages of hard lockdown here. And I was forgetting Zoom meetings and things because I found it overwhelming, actually. And wonderful at the same time. We had quite a few nice online parties for our international family and friends for their birthdays and things like that, which was fun. But it definitely gets tiring. And the screen time, you sort of feel the tiredness build up over days. So thank you for mentioning that. And on the tech side, so gosh, I mean, I think it's amazing that you facilitate such big groups. I was actually in one a networking group in the States. I almost stumbled into it. I didn't quite realize what I was joining. And we had that was my only time I've been involved in breakout rooms where we had a whole group of maybe 40 of us, and then we broke out into groups of 6, and it was like speed networking. And you're right, it's a completely different experience to then be in a small group and then come back into the big group. But I'm a little bit lost with the other tech that you've mentioned. So you said Mentimeter, Miro. I know, many of us are probably clueless about what you mean, but can you just run us through a little example of what can actually be done with one of those? So let's say maybe Mentimeter. Is it a huge question?
No, I was just,
okay.
You saw my facial expression because I wanted to actually share my screen and give it a demo, but I think I'll leave that for now. We'll do another one of your stream play sessions for that. So Miro.com, so Miro.com, and it's literally a virtual whiteboard, and it's got all sorts of little goodies and sticky notes and all sorts of things that you can do with it. And yeah, it's a way to help or assist people who are distributed to work together as if they're in the same space. So there are so many different things you can do with it that I don't even know where to begin. But what I would invite people to do is to go and try it out and play with it.
Thank you, Colleen. You know what? We are going to have to do a separate session, I think, for that type of thing, because I see we're already 25 minutes into an hour and we haven't even got past the tech. So I'd love to just shift slightly gears here, Colleen, and just ask you from an EQ and coaching perspective, do you have any insights and tips, advice for us with regard to how to really improve relationships and optimize relationships online, you know, within our sessions? And then there's the whole other side of relationships in our personal life, and like you say, in terms of integrating all of that. Just quickly before I do that, I use my Fitbit to remind myself to move, as it gives me a buzz to move. Thanks, Colleen. I will try out those platforms. Oh, that's brilliant. That's Anne. Thank you, Anne. Great comment. Just on that, a very funny story. My Garmin, so like a Fitbit, I was doing a park run a little while back, and my Garmin buzzed at me to say, "Oh, you've hit a goal." And as that happened, I was doing a little slow run, and as it happened, I looked down and I did a complete face plant.
Oh no!
I lost focus on what I was doing. So just be careful if you're running of, like, you know, looking down at your buzzing watch. So
sorry, nuns.
It was very funny. Everybody, there must have been about 10 people. They all gathered around. Are you okay? Are you okay? But that's how tech can interfere. So Cole, if we can go back to the EQ side of things,
yes,
in terms of relationships, and really just to engage in a more effective way, because I know this is also a real area of expertise for you.
Naomi, that is a really big question with a number of elements. I think you mentioned EQ, you mentioned coaching, you mentioned online, offline, professional, personal. So where to start? But taking all of that into consideration, I think the key to all of these elements is really about, you mentioned it with looking at your Fitbit, it's really about mindful attention and bringing mindfulness into everything you do. So paying attention to your being before doing, slowing down, listening, all these crucial elements that belong to relationships. Listening, getting curious, bringing curiosity over judgment. And mindfulness is a practice that helps, whether you subscribe or engage in the Western philosophy, Ellen Langer's work, which is noticing new things, or whether you prefer the Eastern philosophy, Thich Nhat Hanh and John Kabat-Zinn follow the Eastern philosophy of meditative mindfulness practice, or both. It's really about paying attention to your attention, paying attention to your inner state of being, so that you can widen the gap between any triggers, any situation that might be frustrating. You can actually notice, what are your emotions trying to tell you? They're signals, they are information, they help you choose what and understand what needs to change, whether it's in yourself, whether it's a boundary that needs to be set, whether you need to change the nature of a relationship, have a courageous conversation with yourself or others. Mindfulness really is a tool where you practice the pause, and it really does take practice for you to enable that way of being. And I'm not saying for a moment, just because I'm interested in emotional intelligence and I teach emotional intelligence and I coach around it, I'm not saying for a moment, don't be human. Emotions, whether they're seen as, some people see them as positive or negative, emotions just are. And I get triggered too. I mean, you get onto this state of awareness, and guess what happens? You've been promoted to the next level. So we're going to throw something in your path to help you grow. And that's the reality of it. So I'm not saying for a moment that if you start turning towards being more emotionally intelligent, that you never feel, or you are never triggered, or you never express your emotions unskillfully. What I am saying is how can you start noticing your emotions more? How can you start working with them and managing yourself so that when you are engaging with other people, you can notice, pick up signals in them. And if you can't just pick them up, you can be deliberate about asking and explicit about noticing when someone's facial expression doesn't match what they're saying, so that you can cultivate healthier relationships with yourself and with other people. So I hope that gives you some insight into this very complex subject with many elements. We're complex adaptive beings ourselves. So, I mean, yes. I think it takes a bit longer than just an hour-long conversation to get into this, but I hope it gives you and listeners some element of what it entails.
Yes, to start with. And thank you. Thank you so much for that, Colleen. I love the way you said that, specifically starting with the mindfulness element. And I just want to say thank you to Petra for being with us. And she said, great insights, ladies. Thank you, Petra. Also, very wise coach as well, Petra. And it's lovely to have all of you with us here. Colleen, thank you for mentioning those Ellen Langer, Thich Nhat Hanh, and John Kabat-Zinn. I'm going to look those up and have a look. I know that you're widely read and you have so much wisdom in this space. And yeah, I mean, we just can't really be reminded enough, I think, to be mindful and to take that pause, as you say, and also to have compassion for ourselves and others. And one of the things that has been so challenging, I think, for so many people with the whole lockdown scenario has been the element of change for, you know, suddenly working from home, also possibly with your partner working from home, also with your children doing homeschooling. I've been fortunate that I haven't had those stresses because we don't have children at home, and Dave and I have been working from home for years. So it wasn't really even a transition much for us. It was just a very peaceful scenario and process, but I know not for many people. So with that in mind, do you have any guidance? I know you and your husband have both been working from home, and you have a 6-year-old that you've been homeschooling, and he's a brilliant child, but he still needs his schooling help, I'm sure. So yeah, can you share a bit about that, Colleen?
So that's a great question, Naomi, and I just want to put something out there. So if people put on that I've got all this expertise around the virtual workplace because I've been a virtual worker for 20 years, with gaps in between, as I said before, COVID, what COVID's done is put even experts on their toes, really, because I would never have thought that I'd be sharing a home office space, a home space, and a school space with my husband and my child. So although I was very comfortable with this way of working, I did not expect it to all become blended literally overnight. And so what we had to do was turn toward ourselves, look at all the different contexts going on in our safety bubble when we were all properly in lockdown, when it really started feeling like we were in a hothouse situation, and look at what kind of relational agreements would we need to put in place. And they were by no means perfect. It was trial and error. Let's try something. If that doesn't work, we'll try something else. And just looking at the different contexts and seeing the different humans with their own needs and values and preferences all under one roof helped us turn toward not only ourselves, but each other in working out what we needed to do and where we needed to do that. So we got to a point where we got into a routine. We each had our own workspaces, but then you can't be, and I mean, this is also before COVID, it's not ideal to be working and living in the same space. So where you have fun, where you watch TV, you watch television, you don't work, for example. And when you're working, you're working. So you actually need to start putting those boundaries in place because we don't have the transition time anymore. those days where you wake up and get ready for work, whoever has to go out and work and whoever stays at home, you get ready, you have a chance between your commute from home to work to gather your thoughts, maybe even to wake up, get that first coffee, and then you arrive in a different environment. That all suddenly went away. And so we need to be more deliberate about creating those transition spaces, and that's within the home, and just to have those transition spaces so that we can make time for ourselves as individuals, make time for the together time, make time for work, make time for school. And it sounds very structured and all neat and packaged, and it isn't. The reality isn't like that at all. It's still trial and error. It's still experimenting. It's still having courageous conversations with self and others, and renegotiating agreements and going, oh, did you forget? This is what we said. And it's a constant dance, but a thoroughly enjoyable one at that.
Yes, absolutely, and challenging. And I love what you say about the transition times. And it's so true, just not having that. I'm guilty, I must be honest. And Dave is much better than me at actually taking the break. But if I get sucked into creative projects especially, I find it really difficult to disengage sometimes. And like you say, it's that discipline. So I've definitely got work to do there in terms of being more structured and more committed to structure itself, actually. So thank you for that, Colleen. Yeah, it's a dance, as you say, and we love to dance.
And I think having structure can set you free. So if you know what some of the kind of hard rules are, you can then become flexible around those and go, well, at least the world's uncertain and it's volatile and ambiguous, but if you start putting some things in place, things that you can control, it can help you feel a bit more free and a little bit more in control.
Yes, that's a very nice way to approach it, because I've done some of these, I think you've spoken in the past with regard to the Enneagram and things. And I know what has come out for me is that freedom is one of my highest, if probably the highest value for me. So I have this resistance towards structure, but I do very much see the value. And for Dave and I, what we found is quite recently we've become a little bit more disciplined about meeting together each morning, because we also work together, but actually physically sitting down together and meeting and setting establishing our day, which has been very helpful. So brilliant. But then there's the next thing. So we also, and many of you watching, I'm sure, are very much we're into expanding our lives and really self-actualizing in a sense. And that's another whole ball game in terms of our time and our dedication and our commitment to following our dreams and setting goals and that sort of thing. And I know, Colleen, you're amazing at doing this integration where, well, you are. I mean, you say it's not perfect, but it's still phenomenal what you achieve with having your son and your stepsons and your husband and, your marriage, and then also your business and furthering your studies in psychology. And I know that you're making great strides in that space. So with that, on that front, because there is so much fulfillment for us in really that type of endeavor, do you have anything to share, to offer with regard to helping people integrate that also and stay focused and keep the sense of purpose, alive and kicking in between the structure?
And my answer to that would be to do it carefully. No, Naomi, it's really something that has not been easy. I think it's that whole iceberg analogy where people see success, but they don't see what goes on beneath the surface. And personally, it's been a really tough road. I think I literally submitted my final report for this degree that I've completed now, another degree, on Friday. And I haven't really come up for air from that before I'm picking up the pieces on what might have dropped while I've been busy studying, or also focusing more time where I want to focus more time, and that's with me, my husband, my child, and my awesome clients and the work that I love. So it hasn't been easy at all. And one thing that happened on Friday is I had a Facebook memory come up when I submitted my reports, and it was something when I started this road, the formal academic path in 2012. And this quote, it's unknown. I don't know who said it, but it came up as a Facebook memory. In the absence of clearly defined goals, we become strangely loyal to performing daily acts of trivia. And that was quite hard hitting for me, because I know all the sacrifices and that I've made as a result of choosing this path. And then that quote came up, and I was like, oh, without the support of my darling family, together with the tenacity, discipline that I had to get through these goals, I'm thankfully taking a break from academia, because I'm not only do I need to, but it's a promise I made to my husband as well, that it's, it's been a long road, and it's been a good path, but it's not easy. You'll know, Naomi, the amount of times I've had to say no. I'd rather be having social engagements or chilling on the couch, but no, weekend after weekend, I'm engaging with data and analysis and statistics, and goodness, I'm glad I'm putting that behind me for a while and taking a break from it.
Yeah, well done, Colleen, and congrats on submitting that final report. I'm so proud of you. That's amazing. I can imagine the sort of the relief. Yeah. But the thing is, I relate in a different sense, because I haven't studied formally for a very long time. But what I have done is poured massive energy into creative endeavors. So, for example, creating my online courses, that was a couple of years in the making. And it was a challenging thing for Dave, especially because for me, it was something that came later in life, this unbelievable unleashing of creativity, really from the age of 40 or so, when I wrote my first novel and then got all involved in the photography and the video. Well, that had happened already, but it really became focused on the training side, the coaching side. And it was difficult from a relationship perspective, because before that, when I was younger, when we were first married, when I was 28, for quite a period, I completely lacked a sense of purpose. And I was totally out of touch with my creativity. I wasn't brought up to really get in touch with it. So what happened is I channeled all of my energy into supporting him, and we've worked together for most of our marriage. But then it was a difficult transition when this incredible surge of creativity just took me over, in a sense. And the directive from inside and the pull to do it was just so strong. But it took a lot of time away from him. So that was quite a negotiation. And it's quite a thing. And I can only imagine even more when you have a child in the mix, or children in the mix. So I've got 2 stepchildren who I absolutely love, but they were already grown up by that stage. They were already, in their mid-30s, let me put it that way. So I didn't have to be negotiating on a daily basis, all of that. And, the emotional intelligence side is such a valuable thing to contribute, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, I mean, it really helps build resilience as well when you are able to notice yourself, notice each other, most importantly, the space between. And it's hard. It still is. You don't know what's in front of you. You don't know what crises are going to hit besides COVID. And that is the biggest opportunity for you to practice and lean in toward that space of emotional intelligence. And I think my biggest teacher is my 6-year-old, and he's a self-awareness meter. You can't walk around and he doesn't say to you, "You're doing this, your face is like that." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you, my boy, for keeping me aware of how I'm showing up." And I think it's such a great tool to practice and to keep that practice going.
Yes, absolutely. And so, am I right that that would be quite a big part of your role in terms of the coaching side of things, whether it's online or whether it's offline, and the kind of leadership training? How do you engage with clients in that way? How does that sort of process work?
So I'm glad you asked me that question in online, because it's not the same as being in the same room. And interestingly, I was just made aware of this narrative recently. My husband said, "You've never actually admitted that being in the same space with other people is better." Because I was always online, everywhere, online, and online's the only way, and there's no other way. And I've never ever said that it is the only way, but I've never said it's not. And he brought that awareness to me. And it's true. Not everything is replicable online. You miss some cues. Some technology doesn't allow, when you're sharing your screen, to see everyone's facial expressions. You miss micro expressions. And especially if people are really good at not showing them, on their face, they might tap their foot, but you'd only know that if you're in the same room with them. And so you can't really pick up on those signals unless you are more deliberate about it. And if you think about it, if you've got a whole lot of little squares on a screen, everyone's all of a sudden in your face. It's a two-dimensional thing, and people are literally in your face as well as yourself. If you don't remember to turn your own camera off, you're seeing yourself, you're seeing everybody, and you need to really look carefully, but possibly more so ask when someone does something, and ask them what that might mean. And the honest truth is, you've got to rely on them being open and honest with you about that, because you can't question something else that you might be sensing. I do believe in sensing and feeling into the space even online, but it's not always possible. And so those are the little cues that you miss working online. And some leaders have even said, the crucial piece of impromptu bumping into people is a huge thing that they're missing, because a lot of leading and getting work done happened like that. If you can imagine busy executives, you're running at 100 miles an hour, and you suddenly see someone and it triggers something in your brain. You can ask them, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, you've just reminded me, just because I bumped into you and I saw you." And you can it's different. You can kind of try and set up, I'm just going to keep my video call open between these hours and pop in, but it isn't the same. And I think people are missing that, and finding other ways around those kinds of impromptu meetings is what I've heard is quite hard.
Yeah, that is such wise words. I haven't thought about it from that perspective, Colleen, but very true. And the other thing I'm also just sort of reading into your words is that if people are not that comfortable online, so they might be hiding, but they might not be intentionally hiding how they feel. It might just be that they're not fully themselves. And so you're not getting the same natural interaction and feedback until, people can become that much more comfortable with, oh, okay, so this is how it is. And so now I'm me. And there's still that thing of, kind of showing up and wanting to, be professional and that sort of thing. Do you do much training then with leaders to help leaders lead better? Is that quite a big part of it?
It's all about being more effective. So the essence of the work that I do with global leaders and their teams and groups throughout organizations, so it doesn't necessarily have to be intact teams, it's groups across organizations, non-hierarchical, cross-functional. The essence of the work is assisting leaders with the often difficult task of balancing human relationships with results. And I like to use the analogy of balancing those scales. Some people might use an analogy, it's like a tightrope, but that's a little bit harsh, but everyone is having their own experience. So it's really about that constant dance and that balance of relationship and results, and what are the courageous conversations that need to be had, because oftentimes these conversations don't take place. And it's really about being more deliberate about setting those conversations up and having them in the most empathic way, with grace, and being able to get real with people, even if you are separated and you have to do it via technology. Rules of the game have changed. You have to have different kinds of etiquette with technology. I mean, it's about being able to make sure that all voices are heard, and it's not always possible either, because technology has a lag. So where two people talk at the same time, you won't be able to hear anything. And so that's why some of the rules are put in place around going on mute, put up your hand. But it's also not hard and fast, those rules. Sometimes it's okay to just have open conversation where everyone's mic's open and you relax together and you're able to applaud each other, for example, with all the mics open. So there are no hard and fast rules, but there are different rules and etiquette and using technology in the best way possible. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Cole. It just brings me back to the celebration aspect of when we were using Zoom to, celebrate birthdays together with our family internationally. And it was actually quite cool because we actually chatted more with our international family than ever before during COVID. And we had those opportunities with some technical hitches, I must admit, in terms of, the lag, just the tech lag. And I love the whole way that you approach it all, Colleen. Thank you. Because it is can be a minefield from a relational point of view, especially if you are, in an international, multicultural, different languages, the whole thing. It can be quite challenging, but very rewarding.
Yes, it does certainly open up new doors. I mean, for people, I've noticed so many people having gone online. They haven't only gone online, they've gone international. And I think it's wonderful because the world is now your oyster. And people are really tapping into that and finding different ways to truly connect online.
Yes, exactly. I think so too. And I think that's one of the silver linings from the COVID experience, and one of the things that will carry over. That's for probably most of us, there will be an element of online interaction, much more than there was before, which is a positive. And for me, bringing it back to the camera, it's just such an amazing way to reach so many more people with the on-screen sessions and the videos and that sort of thing. So brilliant. Do you work much with video to sort of integrate the video with Zoom and that sort of thing, or not that much?
I do. I do send as the asynchronous style. So because leaders and global leaders are so busy, I sometimes send snippets of information, like content type, and shorter little snippets of video so that they can just get acquainted with some of the content in their own time, which is great because it's not everything has to be live. And so they'll have the video access, and then when we get together, we do all the process work that we do together. And it's so fascinating for me. And yes, you can't get away from the fact that you'd rather sometimes be in the same place with people. Even companies in the world that call themselves fully distributed plan social gatherings together because of the fact that we're social beings. And even if it's once a year, they plan to get together just to get together, which I find interesting. But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with international travel, etc., and other ways that you have to maybe have local meetups with people.
Exactly. Yes, very valuable. Thank you, Colleen. Exciting stuff. And we're coming around, we're almost at an hour, and I know there's so much more that you could share with us, and so much more than I'm sure people can learn, especially with regard to the whole tech thing. But just before we end, though, do you have anything else that comes to mind just to share from a leadership perspective, an EQ perspective, or just an online engagement perspective? Was that another huge question for you?
Wow, all those elements all together. I think it's the one thing that is the silver lining throughout is that conscious intentionality, that being deliberate, not trying to replicate what was in person online, and looking at the structures of meetings, looking at the rhythm of meetings, seeing what needs to change, and then actually changing it. So if change is disturbing patterns that repeat themselves, then it's not comfortable, but it's needed if you're wanting to change the status quo. And so that's the comment that I have that covers EQ, it covers leadership, it covers online working. It's that small little step you can take that disrupts, if you will, or disturbs the way things normally work. And that takes courage.
Yes. And most of the worthwhile things that we do take courage, don't they? Brilliant. Thank you, Colleen. So conscious intentionality. I'll remember that. And I'll remember your terms. Distributed world. I haven't heard that described in that way before. So we are distributed.
Well, there's a reason why I say that is because I hear people saying when we are face to face. Well, actually, we kind of face to face now.
Yes.
If you think about it, we're face to face. So I think it's just being deliberate about the narrative. And when we are in the same physical location again, it's going to be delightful.
It is. It's going to be a celebration. Brilliant. So, Colleen, just with regard to if our viewers would like to find out more about what you do and, where they can find you and where they can find more of your wisdom, and just to touch on, who you work with. So would it be individuals? Would it be corporates? Would it be groups mostly? Can you give us a little more insight about that and some places where people can find you?
Thank you, Naomi. I work mostly with global teams, global senior teams and middle management teams. But that doesn't mean to say I never work with individuals. I work mostly with corporate, with organizations and individuals within corporate, teams within corporate and groups within corporate. And I've got a wonderful network of coaches who I collaborate with in different parts of the world who work with individuals as well. So it's like the whole package. We are being that change, co-creating, being collaborative. And so if people want to reach out to me, have a conversation, my details are on connect-eq.com. And I've had a wonderful time. So I'm just so grateful to you, Naomi, for this opportunity and the time that we got to spend and play in StreamYard and with your audience, with our audience. So thank you so much. It's been a really, really fun time. Oh, and there's also LinkedIn as well. So if people want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that'll be really great to connect.
Wonderful. And thank you so much again. I so appreciate your time and your insight, and I'm inspired to do more adventurous things in our online playground. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Naomi. Bye, everyone.
We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it for you. If you did, please share this podcast with your women friends, leave us a review, and subscribe. We'll be most grateful to get the message out to more visionary women who want to become the star of their brand. And here's to you becoming the star of your brand. To help you with that, hop over to brandstarscourse.com and grab your free online course to get started. Then join us for the next podcast episode. Thank you for being part of our Brand Stars community, and have a radiant rest of your day.